Peter Mutharika, the man that voters rejected 5 years ago, has been re-elected as president of Malawi. He's 85 years old, Yale-trained law professor, and once written off as yesterday's man. But today, he's back in State House, back in charge. The question is this: how did Malawi circle back to him? And what does that mean for the people of Malawi? My name is DJ Bwakali, and Africa is my superpower. Welcome to African Awakening, the Pan-African show that is awakening, uniting, and transforming Africa. If you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? If you're not yet a member of this channel, what are you waiting for? Welcome home. And to those who are already members of this Pan-African family, thank you so much. Thanks for your support. Let us now fly to Lilongwe, Malawi's capital, and find out if Malawians voted for Mutharika, the former president, or whether it was a protest vote against Chakwera, the current president. At a deeper level, we will find out whether Malawian voters were so dejected by the present that they leaned back into a past that was at least better. And if that is the case, why didn't they choose a much better future, instead of focusing on past glory? That's the big question, and we will answer it before the end of this African Awakening episode. Malawi, a country of 22 million people, known as the warm heart of Africa, also one of the poorest nations on earth. 5 years ago, its Supreme Court made history. It annulled a presidential election and paved the way for Lazarus Chakwera's presidency. Today, that chapter has closed. Peter Mutharika first took power in 2014. He was credited with cutting inflation and building roads. But corruption allegations clouded his presidency. In 2019, he claimed victory again, but Malawi's court annulled that election. Kenya was the first African country to order a presidential rerun in 2017.
That the presidential election held on 8th August 2017 was not conducted in accordance with the Constitution and the applicable law, rendering the declared results invalid, null, and void.
Malawi became the second. Chakwera won that rerun. Fast forward 5 years. Chakwera has fallen. Mutharika has returned. To understand Mutharika's return, we must first understand Chakwera's fall. President Chakwera came to power on a wave of popular goodwill, promising a revitalized Malawi. His high-five agenda was ambitious, pledging to create 1 million jobs, end government corruption, and ensure food security for the nation's 22 million people. But for the average Malawian, these promises have rung hollow. The country has been gripped by severe cost of living crisis. Many struggle to afford basic necessities like food and cooking oil. Just a quick one before I go on. Last year, I wrote a book about historic African leaders like Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, Julius Nyerere, and of course, Ibrahim Traore. There are nearly 100 of them in that book. Many of you have already bought the book, and I'm very grateful for that. If you haven't bought it, please head on to Amazon and purchase your copy. Both physical and digital copies are available. Thanks a lot. The capital, Lilongwe, and the commercial hub of Blantyre have been plagued by persistent fuel shortages. It's been crazy. This has led to cripplingly long lines at fuel stations and brought parts of the economy to a standstill. Today, Malawians have sunk even deeper into poverty than 5 years ago. The World Bank says that 15.8 million Malawians now live below the poverty line. The World Bank forecasts that the number of Malawians living in poverty is set to grow even more this year by 400,000. That's going to push the total number of those living in poverty to 16 million people. Of course, the World Bank itself, together with the IMF, are partially responsible for this poverty. But that's a story for another day. Malawi's biting poverty and the ensuing discontent fuel today's shock result. According to the Malawi Electoral Commission, Mutharika has won decisively by more than 50% of the vote. Why have Malawians fallen back into the arms of Mutharika when they had given him the cold shoulder just 5 years ago? In the face of the current hardships, many voters have engaged in a form of political nostalgia. They miss the good old days. They remember the Mutharika years, for all their faults, as a period of relative stability. Many people remember him for bringing prices down and for building things that people could actually see, like roads, schools, and hospitals. When it came time to vote, those memories mattered more than the corruption scandals, especially since the current president, Chakwera, was seen as failing everywhere. The vote itself was tense. Counting took longer than previous elections. Claims and counterclaims of rigging were rampant. Mutharika's Democratic Progressive Party accused Chakwera's camp of rigging through a new electronic transmission system. Meanwhile, Chakwera's Malawi Congress Party claimed that Mutharika's allies tampered with polling stations. No hard evidence was produced, but mistrust defined the vote counting period. Independent observers documented unlawful campaigning, missing names on ballots, even vote buying in some polling stations. In Blantyre, protesters rioted. However, the Electoral Commission insists that the process was credible. Why does this matter? Because Malawi sits at a democratic crossroads. Just 5 years ago, it was hailed as a beacon, an African nation where courts stood firm and people's voices prevailed. Now, the same man voters rejected is back in power. For Chakwera, this is a humiliation. For Malawians, it's a deja vu. A leader accused of corruption has returned, not because he reinvented himself, but because his successor failed to deliver. This is the paradox of African democracy. People don't always vote for someone. Often, they vote against hunger, joblessness, and empty promises. Often, they end up with the same hunger, joblessness, and empty promises. And the cycle repeats itself across voting cycles all over the continent. So, what now? Mutharika inherits a nation in crisis. Inflation is biting. University graduates are idle. No jobs, no fuel. Rural families can't afford maize. Will Mutharika tackle corruption this time? Will he secure fuel, food, and jobs? Or will Malawi sink even deeper into disillusionment? At 85, does he have the stamina, or is Malawi merely recycling old leadership? because no alternative emerged. On the other hand, it could be that the people didn't have the courage to choose those alternatives. Western-style democracy practiced across Africa almost always favors incumbents or big names, not big hearts or big minds. For ordinary Malawians, the stakes are not academic. They are about whether a mother can afford nshima, the maize meal that is Malawi's staple. It's about whether millions of unemployed youth can find work next month. Against this bleak backdrop, we must pose the question, does democracy in Malawi and indeed across Africa mean change, or it's just a merry-go-round of the elites? Peter Mutharika is back, not because people loved his past, but because people feared their present. That is the painful truth of Malawi's election. It was the painful truth in Ghana's elections earlier this year, when people voted for John Mahama, same guy they had rejected 8 years earlier. It is the same painful truth every African country that re-elects an incumbent, even when they are underperforming. We, the people of Africa, must have the courage to elect transformative servant leaders. We must choose big hearts and big minds over big names and big bank accounts. My name is DJ Bwakali, and Africa is my superpower. Keep awakening. And to the people of Malawi, we wish you nothing but the best. We are in this together.